Hello everybody in YouTube land and everyone watching live on Twitch. This is the first episode of a new series that I'm workshopping and testing out on the channel that I'm calling In-Depth Deck Building. My theory behind this was that while we have a lot of deck building videos, we rarely have videos where we actually talk in depth about every decision we make, because really, the brain is a crazy thing. I can immediately be like Flex Joe Diamond and my brain just knows everything that I need on the spot. But we never really put those thoughts that the brain whirs through to get out there. So that's what the goal of this whole series is. That I'm gonna build a deck, and I'm gonna talk about all the decisions in as much detail as I feel is needed for why I am making these decisions in the deck building. We're gonna talk a little bit about upgrades, and then gonna go from there. If you like this and want to see certain decks, let me know in the comments, and by liking the video is a good way for me to know that you want to see more of the series, but commenting on the video is even more. And if you're watching on Twitch, just being here and chatting is also a good way for me to know that. Likewise, if you want to see me maybe do this with other people, like getting Travis and Bryn to do one of these, or another content creator, definitely let me know down in the comments as well. I sent a note to our patrons to give me some ideas to start with, and the one that I saw the most in the comments was a Flex Joe Diamond. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Something to keep in mind for this series: this is not about right or wrong, right? This is not about you could probably build this deck differently, but I'm giving my perspective as a deck builder and an ARKHAM player for why I'm making these decisions. So these decks are right to me, these decisions are right to me, they might not be right to you, and that's just how it goes. With this Flex Joe Diamond, I am going to be building this deck with the assumption that my teammates, we're going to just assume Travis and Bryn, are going to be able to do their job. That's just the safest way when it comes to deck building for at least my perspective, because I play with players that I know are going to do their job. I'm not going to need to go too hard. Luckily, on a flex roll, this is kind of something that happens, but an example of this is if I was building a clue getting Daisy Walker, right? If I was playing with people I did not trust, I would be putting some damage cards into the game. But because I do trust deck building with and playing with Travis and Bryn, I know I can go hard on the Clover and not have to worry too much about the other details. So let's talk about the role of a flex. I'm going to be assuming that this is playing in 3 players. My job is to solve problems that show up to take stress off of either my Clover or my goon. This would require me to grab clues off locations, especially lower shroud locations. We leave the big high shroud locations for our main Clover. And the big health enemies, the scary enemies, generally fall onto the part of the goon. Travis said in an older video that the idea of just the theory of a Clover or a goon is to deal player damage or heal player or gather player clues consistently every round. That's kind of your general goal. There's going to be some waxing and waning, but when it evens out over the whole scenario, that's kind of your goal. When you are the flex, you don't need to hit those thresholds, but you do need to be able to, for example, in a 3-player game, you're going to want to consistently be either dealing 2 damage to defeat an enemy or grabbing 2 clues and then setting up for the next turn. That's kind of just your general role as a flex. Joe Diamond also is a very good flex investigator, so this is actually a pretty easy investigator to start with. We have 2 willpower, or 2 brain, and 2 foot, or 2 agility if you're a stickler. And we have the good numbers of our do something stats, 4/4 in our book and our fist. We also get to play with some insights, so we're going to be building a hunch deck as well. I'm pretty excited to talk about Joe Diamond. I've played a lot of them, and I think his flex decks are really fun to play because he's the perfect flex investigator. So we're going to start with our hunch deck. That's kind of where I like to start with Joe Diamond because it's kind of just like him. He is Joe Diamond. By the way, Infinity Cube, thank you so much for your Twitch Prime. Welcome to the Golden Table. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm happy to have you here. So we're going to just search by insights, and we're going to just grab a few insights to get this going. What I generally do with Joe Diamond is I have a default 10, and usually 6 of those 10 hunches are my always hunches. Those cards are always going to be in my hunch deck. And then the other 4 are kind of flexible depending on if I have other hunches that would work better for certain scenarios. So that's something that I cannot advise here, but I'll be talking about that my forever hunches that I think are pretty easy. One of them even has a hunch in the name. So working a hunch. This is a 2-cost fast event, fast play only during your turn, discover 1 clue at your location. This is just a free clue with Joe Diamond off his hunch deck, because you get to play it off the top of the hunch deck, reducing its cost by 2. So this is actually just a hunt. This is just a clue in your hunch deck, and this will always be in there. And as far as I'm concerned, hunch deck forever. How do you do the bold on this? Is it like this? Forever. Let's go. Forever. So we have working a hunch. So this is a card that I just think is just a staple for Joe Diamond. There's no reason not to put it in the deck. Even if you are just like not getting clues at all, if your game plan is to just kill things, this is something that you're going to always want in your hunch deck. It's just like really good, and it just does the job. Just play it. Trust me, it's going to work really hard. Going through, let me just look at the Guardian ones too. So what we don't want from the hunch deck is we don't want cards that are reactionary based on board state. Scene of the Crime is going to it's going to be in our deck probably as a flex, because it kind of does everything we want in one card. But we don't want this card in our hunch deck because we want to be able to take the hunch deck and play it each turn. That's like the optimal gameplay loop that we want for Joe Diamond. We want to be able to hunch whenever and wherever. Is it less value to put 0-cost events in the hunch deck? Yes, I think it is generally, if you just look at it on the tin, less valuable to put 0-cost insights into your hunch deck. However, with that said, I still do it because the true value for me for the hunch deck is you basically get to draw a card every turn, right? It's giving you an extra card to play. That's kind of like what it is. It's just card draw with resource reduction if you can swing it. So while yes, it is better to like just always get a resource reduction, I'm probably not going to always be running it for the resource reduction. On that note, another one of my forever hunches is burning the midnight oil. The reason for this is while I'm always happy to draw burning the midnight oil, I'm even happier to like never draw burning the midnight oil, right? So if I can get burning the midnight oil for free from my hunch deck, this is just like gravy. So while this card isn't getting a resource reduction as an example, what this card is doing is it's out of my deck, and I can put other things into my deck to help me like solve the problem or flex or get things going. So this is going to be another forever hunch. This will like always sit in there and always be happy for me to do the thing that I'm doing. Okay, let's look at a few more options. When I'm talking about like the reactionary ones, like Crack the Case, this is one that I would not put into my hunch deck if I was looking for more economy, which we might do. I like to start with my hunches, get at least like the forever hunches in there, which we only need actually like one more card to be in there to hit that. And then after that, we want to look at the pyramid. So this is something that Travis made where, one second, I actually want to see if I have this saved as its own image. What is it? Is it Game Guide Series? We haven't done... We haven't done a how to win video since like the longest time. So I don't remember if I have, I'm looking for the pyramid. So Travis made this pyramid. Aha, here it is. Perfect. Okay. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about, the pyramid. So this is kind of like where it's a great example of how to make sure your deck is built properly. It has a good foundation. So the purpose of your deck, our purpose is to flex. So we need to have like the things that help us get there, like to, you know, do our job. Our economy, card draw and resources to make it so it actually like gets things done. Some function, which is just kind of like an extension of your purpose, which just allows your deck to function more efficiently. And then we have fun, which is the top of the pyramid. You should never forget fun in your deck. You should always include a few cards that are just there for fun, and then we go from there. So crack the case. Back to the pyramid. This is our economy. We're not going to go here yet. We're going to look to see kind of at least our purpose, to see what we're looking at and going from there. We need one more insight, and I'm taking it slow because I want to be able to make sure I am hitting things. Okay, so I know what I'm going to do. We're going to take actually this emergency aid. This is going to be our last forever hunch. All right, flexible. So this is going to be our last forever hunch. And the reason we're taking emergency aid is because it plays very well with a card that is very strong, which we're about to add into our deck in a second. So just choose an investigator, heal 2 damage, but I said earlier, I want my hunch deck to be working on turn 1. Well, luckily, we can now do that with this card, which is an easy inclusion in a lot of decks, which is In the Thick of It. Most of the time, damage doesn't matter for these In the Thick of It. It's like the trauma. We're going to be taking 2 physical trauma for this, so I'll just put this in our notes as well. So we have 2 physical trauma. Just keeping these notes for people who might be checking out the deck list. So we're going to be taking 2 physical trauma. 1, because Joe Diamond has more red than he has blue. And it's one of those things that, like, he's a little bit more fragile due to his low foot value. So emergency aid basically just negates the weakness that comes with that In the Thick of It, which is really nice. Yes, we do have 2 in the deck. So like maybe the second one won't do anything, but we also won't guarantee that we're going to hit In the Thick of It, emergency aid within the first few turns. So we might have accrued more damage before then. So if we hit that one and then another one, it's really easy to get things done. Notably, you as the flex, your actions are the least valuable. So when I'm playing like an emergency aid Joe Diamond in 2-player, for example, which I generally can flex, but I don't flex as much in 2-player. I mean, I would flex if I was playing Joe Diamond, and then my other investigator would also be a flex to balance that out. When you're the flex in 3 or 4 players, you have so much free time compared to the other investigators because of just the nature of your role. So being able to hit emergency aid, you'll definitely have the time, and it costing 0 is really nice. If someone else has damage on you and you are damage free, use your other emergency aid to heal them as well. Brad, 75 months of the golden table, that's freaking crazy. 75 months? That's insane. I've always treated hunches as forever despite knowing the actual rules. Yeah, it's honestly me too. Most of the time my hunches are forever hunches, but this is an in-depth deck building video, so I'm going even more in-depth than I normally do. Okay, we need to kill enemies. How are we going to do that? We need to get clues. How are we going to do that? Let's look at weapons. Let's start there by looking at some stuff. while stuff like the 45 Thompson is a good way to kill things, in my mind and in this deck, this is not a Flex's way to kill things. We are looking for things that take up one hand slot and things that allow us to, you know, hold, for example, a magnifying glass in one hand and a weapon in the other. While Joe's signature does allow us to get 2 hand slots that can be tool assets, that's not what I'm building around in this deck. If I can play the Colts, I will. However, I don't think the Colts are that great. Aren't like that. Like, they're strong, but I've never really like missed them in my Joe Diamond decks because most of the time you're hitting the Elder Sign to get the insight event, or you're just kind of like happy that the insight events are outside of your deck. And yes, I will say, Astute Dunsparce, you are probably right. This is just going to be a knife and magnifying glass, just as God intended. So we're going to play Machete. Machete is really nice for a Flex Investigator because generally you only have one enemy engaged with you. There's one enemy you need to solve, and you are going to solve that enemy. You might need to spend the engage action because I'm 99% sure if you attack an enemy engaged with another Investigator, you do not deal +1 damage. Because the enemy is not the only enemy engaged with you. You have 0 enemies engaged with you, so you do need to be aware of that. Again, though, as the Flex, you are here to make everyone else's life easier. So, if, for example, the Clover drew an enemy that was big and huge, and the Guardian drew a small enemy, you say, hey, Guardian, I'm going to engage that enemy off of you, I'm going to cut it up, and then you're going to solve the big enemy at the Clover who is, like, over here at this location. So this is kind of like what you need to remind yourself as the Flex. While you will be able to deal damage to do good things, you're not responsible for the real big things that might show up. And honestly, your damage output, while will be consistent, won't be enough to like actually do it. We have a survival knife as well. That's going to be our other weapon. We're going to be looking for one of these to put into play. And honestly, we're not going to be picky. The first one that we get is the first one that we're going to be happy to see. Notably, Joe's deck size is bigger. So it's bigger on the back. If we just look at it, he does have, he does have 40 cards, but remember that you are taking 10 cards out, so you are just going to have a normal sized deck when you actually are doing your mulligan. Survival Knife, this is a card that has a little bit of an upgrade tax on it. We are going to be wanting to upgrade this ASAP, so we're just going to, and the reason for that, again, I have to make sure I explain. This is in depth. We're explaining everything. Even if you know what I'm about to say, I'm going to need to say it. The reason we're upgrading this is because, one, this only triggers on damage, which is nice. Which is nice because, you know, like we have more red than we have blue after our emergency aids, right? So it's one of those things that we want to, like, you know, we have more red to go around in the long term. But two, the reason that we want to get rid of it is because this is after an enemy attacks. So we need to actually get attacked for this to do its job. The upgraded version doesn't care about damage or horror because it's just when an enemy attacks you, before resolving that attack, you get to use the survival knife to fight back. So these are cards that are going to be early on in our upgrades, so we are going to want to just keep that in mind. That survival knife does have a little bit of a tax to go with it. Our other hand slots are going to be on a magnifying glass. So this card just gives us more book while investigating, which allows us to do our job even better, to just grab up those clues on those 1 to 3 shroud locations, which is kind of like what we want to do to allow our Clover to get the big burst clues on other locations. We are going to be running ways to pick up more clues, but it's not going to be the major goal of our deck to get the same amount of burst clues that our main clue getter is going to be getting. So I think this is a pretty alright start for our purpose. But what I want to do is I want to grab a few more pieces to help our purpose out. And I'm just giving a second to kind of think of what I'm going to be doing to do that. So we're going to grab two vicious blows because this is just more damage. This allows us to defeat a 3 health enemy, for example. So it's going to be one of those things that we're going to be wanting to use this to deal with the small enemies as they may show up. And we're also going to grab 2 copies of Deduction, which are just like the flex thing that we're going to be doing. Now, so basically, before I get to the second point, basically the idea is as the flex, if you can't solve a problem that you draw, you are bad, right? Like you need to be able to solve like pretty much every problem that you get. These are just tools that kind of help you do that. We just added 2 practiced skills. When you do that, so we have 4 practice cards in our deck. When you do this, you need to ask yourself, am I playing Practice Makes Perfect? Practice Makes Perfect. Search the top 9 cards of your deck. When it is skill tested at your location, search for a practice skill and commit to this test if able. Shuffle the remaining cards back to your deck, and after this test ends, if it was successful, add that skill to your hand instead of discarding it. I think with a lot of other investigators, you kind of can make a choice if I want to do this, but I think, honestly, and it's kind of a bummer to say, but I think this card is, if you're trying to build a true optimal flex Joe Diamond deck, this card kind of has to be in your deck. The reason for this is that with Practice Makes Perfect, you generally want to hit, I think Travis says like at least 7 skills that you can hit off of it. With Joe Diamond as a flex, you have an easy 8 skills that you can put into your deck because Joe Diamond and Roland Banks, you're right, Astute Dunsparce, have the perfect card pool for Practice Makes Perfect. So we're going to play Practice Makes Perfect, and the other cards we're going to be adding are 2 copies of Overpower because they give us fist icons and they replace themselves. And 2 copies of Perception because they give us 2 books and they also replace ourselves, and yes, they're also practiced. So this is kind of like our practice package solved. So we need to add 18 more cards into this deck, and we need to add 4 more hunches, just keeping track of everything. So if I'm looking at this right now, I think that our purpose at this point is kind of figured out. So we have 6... we have 10, 14, we have 16 cards in our deck that are kind of just here to be our purpose. Luckily, Practice Makes Perfect also kind of doubles as function, but we're going to get to some other stuff to help boost that as well. A good place to stop is here as well, is looking who our ally is going to be. And in a Flex Joe Diamond deck, there's an ally that we want. Unfortunately, he is very expensive. And that is our good friend Michael Lee. This is what we're probably going to be building towards, because this is like, 1, a perfect card for Mr. Joe Diamond. It's just absolutely freaking insanely good for this son of a bitch, right? And 2, it's also just like a perfect card for flexes. The reason why it's so good for Joe Diamond is because it, boosts the stats he cares about, and like it's the same for flexes, but it also soaks for so much, which is really nice for Joe Diamond because we can be particularly fragile, right? That's just kind of the thing. We're going to eventually get to solving the problem for that. So this is where we're going to eventually get with our deck, but the question is, what do we start with in this deck? All right, so these are the questions we need to look at ourselves, right? What does Michael Lee cost? Michael Lee costs 4 resources. So our ally in our level 0 deck should be relatively similar in cost, so we don't have to worry about our curve changing too much as we upgrade. This is kind of one of those things that as you build your decks and you look at upgrading, you should be cautious of it when you are building. If your curve goes up higher as you upgrade, you're going to want to do the economy to get there. If your curve actually goes lower, you can ask yourself, am I going to have my economy be a little bit weaker at the start of the campaign to fill these holes in later with the cards that, you know, I don't need this economy for? And I think the answer to that is really depends on your status for that. So we're going to want to look something that is 3 or 4 resources for Michael Lee. So let's just look at some allies. And let's talk about them. I think Alice Luxley is not a bad choice at all, right? She gives 4. She deals damage to an enemy. That's a pretty, like, soaks for 2 and 2. She basically does the exact same job as Michael Lee. And I think that's really nice for her. Beat Cop doesn't help on the clue getting side. However, Beat Cop, he doesn't actually... So the thing is with Beat Cop over Alice is that enemies are more of a priority than clues are as the flex. Like, clues are very easy to just pick up with basic investigate actions, but enemies you're gonna have to deal with as they show up and then kill them like as they come. I think Alice and Beat Cop are both fine choices. I think Greta is, like, we could go into upgraded Greta. Like, if we just look at upgraded Greta over here. Oh, no, we can't go into upgraded Greta. Sorry, he's not blue. He always is blue to me, but no, he's not. Tetsuo, I think, is also fine for the soaking and all that. But so for this deck, I'm actually, from the choice I would make, is I would run 2 copies of Guard Dog. It is a little bit on the lower side for the curve, but what Guard Dog does is it allows us to have some synergy with our Survival Knife, which is kind of something that we are building towards. What this does is Guard Dog allows us to prioritize our Survival Knife upgrade over our Michael Lee upgrade. So it allows us to get a little bit there. With that said, I don't think Alice or Beat Cop are bad choices for this. But for me personally, with this deck, I think I would run Guard Dog just for some more incidental damage and also some synergy with our Survival Knife. So that's what I would do for this deck, but I don't think there's a wrong choice between the 3. Honestly, I think the only wrong choice here is, like, you could do Greta, but I think she's just a bit too expensive. And, like, you could, like, it also has some synergy with Emergency Aid too, so maybe Greta is worth it. I think the only one is obviously the not choice is you just don't do Venturer. eForest, 20 months of the golden table. Thank you for your support. I hope you're having a great Friday. Okay, so there's our ally. We have to also figure out our in the thick of it experience, what we're going to be doing with that. So let's just take we have to get to economy, but let's just take a little second to look at some upgraded insights to see if anything moves the needle for us. Fool me once. Hand-eye coordination, no. A lesson learned. I like it, but not for this deck. And I think On the Trails are not the way. Looking at some Seeker cards. I don't think there's anything here that jumps out things that we need to have in our deck. I do like Seeking Answers for an eventual path, but I don't think I like the Seeking Answers 0. You know, if you shift-click class tabs, it shows multiple at once. I do know that, thank you. All right, let's look at some economy cards. Are these deep dive decks going to be posted on ARKHAM.db? They're going to be posted in the video description, but I usually don't publish the decks on ARKHAM.db. We're looking for resource. Okay, so the thing about Seekers is that they have some fantastic economy in their world. Burning the Midnight Oil is a great card because it advances the game while also giving you clues, right? Crack the Case. You're advancing the games, it gives you resources, not gives you clues. But you're advancing the game and it also gives you a bunch of resources to go with it. Guardians, they got some juice in them. And I think actually, I love this card, again, where this is coming from the concept of 3-player. We are going to run 2 copies of Stand Together. The reason for this is that we are a flex. Again, I'm gonna be saying the same stuff over and over and over again. And we're kind of here to hang out and help our teammates when problems arise, right? And generally, that means we're going to be with someone in our location. We can go off on our own, but I think you don't have to as a flex. I think it's okay to stay with somebody. I'm going to do the stand together for this. This might get upgraded out as we go, depending on if we want some like different economy or if our curve goes. But I think I like this a bit more than Crack the Case. So Crack the Case is another alternative. I think Crack the Case is a very strong card, but I think it's stronger in a main clue getter as opposed to a flex clue getter. Because you generally are going to be emptying out lower shroud locations of shrouds that are 1, 2, or 3. And we could just play emergency cache for that, or we could play stand together, which gives 4 resources between 2 people, 2 and 2. So it's kind of like one of those things that I think it's going to do more for the team. And because you have as the flex those actions to do these things, it means that your stand togethers are going to be you're going to have more time to, worst case scenario, move to someone's location and give them the resources with this. Now, it sounds like a lot of what I'm saying is, as the flex, you can kind of waste your time. And it's true. You actually can, as a flex, have a little more leeway when it comes to what you need to be doing at once. Because if you have just made... The theory is that if you have made everything easier for your mains, your main clue getter and your main goon, you actually need to do as little as possible just to get the job done, right? And that gives you like the time to do these sort of actions. Okay, let's look at our curve. So we have 6 2-cost cards, but two of them are in here. So we actually only have 2 2-cost cards, which are the survival knives. We have 4 3-cost cards. Sorry, so that's 2 machetes and 2 guard dogs. This is eventually going to be going up to 4, and then we have 2 4-cost cards, which I'm pretty sure is a detective's cult, if that counts for one. Am I crazy? Where's my other... Oh, it's unsolved case. It's unsolved case. Yeah, I was like, where's my other fucking 4-cost card? It's my weakness. Yeah, it's my weakness. Okay. So right now our curve is kind of like hovering kind of like this. We're only going to need to play 1 machete, hopefully, or 1 survival knife, hopefully. Magnifying glass is 1, so it's not free, but it's really close. Same with practice makes perfect. So I think we can probably get by with stand together and burning the midnight oil. Probably. I think we'll just stop there for resources, and instead we're going to look at draw. So, like with economy, Seekers are very good at drawing cards. And I think, honestly, we're just going to go for the nice and simple Deep Knowledge. So, Deep Knowledge, I think, is going to be our first flexible insight. It can be forever. It's like very easy to be forever. But I think depending on how your deck is feeling, if you want to just be able to hit your card draw in your mulligan, Deep Knowledge can help you get there. But I think this is going to be the first of our flexibles. Looking at some Guardian card draw, we could run Glory. I almost called it Gory. We could do Glory over here. Which is something that I don't think is terrible. It's commits for 2 books if you don't need it. 1 XP for Thorough Inquiry. I'll look at the XP cards in a second. I have some ideas. I'm going to worry about the other stuff first before we spend our experience. Because there's a card that I already know I'm going to be buying for my level 0 deck because it really changes Joe Diamond's game. IMO. Play after you defeat an enemy, draw 2 cards. Like, it's not terrible. It's one of those things that I think it's a good card for this. Do we want this? Like, what's our card draw right now? So this is what we look at. We have, these guys replace themselves, so they're not actually card draw. We have Deep Knowledge as our only card draw. Let's look at some Seeker cards here. I think, like, we could do a Thorough Inquiry for sure. Honestly, We're going to do 2 copies of Thorough Inquiry, and those are going to be another one of our flexible ones. So, this is one that you might take out depending on how your deck is feeling, right? Because it is great icons, right? So like this one might leave there. I could see going for 1 and 1, but being able to grab this, like when you want to, like from your hunch deck at a cost of reduced by 2 is a really nice thing to do. However, if you are going to leave this in your hunch deck, there's something you need to be very aware of. And this is why it's under the flexible, because it might go into your actual deck proper. This is something you need to be very aware of. And that is that if this is on your hunch deck, you are going to want to play it immediately. If there is no downtime and it gets shuffled in, the first one is okay. But if you continually do not choose to play this, and this is why it's so important that you need to commit to this at the start of the scenario when you're shuffling this and building your hunch deck, it costs 2 actions, so its cost is on the heftier side. If this continues to get reshuffled to the top of your hunch deck, you are probably going to have a bad time. So you need to commit that if you are going to put 1 or 2 of these into your hunch deck, it's a little bit softer if you only have 1 of them, you are going to want to play this immediately. You want this out of your hunch deck, because having 1 or 2 in your hunch deck, you can kind of work with that and like get it done. Yeah, I think this is a good thing too that we can talk about the preposterous sketches, because you are 100% right. They all have their pros and cons, right? This one, it costs, you get the reduction, but you need to have a clue your location. You draw 3 cards. Deep Knowledge costs 0, so you don't get the reduction, but there's no stipulation. You do add curse tokens, which doesn't matter. And then you get to choose the order that, like, you get to choose the combination of cards drawn. Thorough Inquiry costs 2, an additional action, but it's 5 cards spread across investigators at your location. The nice thing about Thorough Inquiry in the hunch deck is that you don't actually go down a card. When you play Thorough Inquiry, if you say, for example, draw all the cards yourself, you're only drawing 4 cards at the cost of 2 actions. When it's in your hunch deck, you actually are seeing 5 cards because the hunch deck is an additional free card in your hand. Again, that's why this is on the flexible, because and especially as we upgrade, this might change. But it looks like right now we have our hunch deck built, but we ain't stopping there. We're also going to put in 2 copies of Shortcut. And that's going to be, I think, probably one of our last flexible ones. We'll see what else shows up. Shortcut. Fast play loading your turn, choose an investigator location, move that investigator to a connecting location. The nice thing about this card is it leaves the hunch deck pretty easily, and you don't need to worry too much about it. You don't need to use it on yourself. It's a very easy thing. So if you have any sort of stress about putting Thorough Inquiry into your hunch deck, just throw in Shortcut instead. We might get one more flexible, but I think that we can kind of just see as it goes. Okay. So I think our economy is sorted too. We might want some more resources. Like I think an emergency cache probably ain't a bad idea. So I think I'm going to run... Man, the problem with emergency cache is that if you get it... I like emergency cache. Like I think the card is still incredibly playable, but I prefer my economy to be a bit more like Stand Together or Burning the Midnight Oil. But I think we still do want it. Don't think we want those. We definitely don't want Clean Them Out. This is also another option for Joe. This could be a good thing, but we're going to do that in other ways to get there for Delay the Inevitable. Yeah, I think we will run to... Get out of here. I think we will run 2 emergency caches just to make things stronger, and I will put 2 emergency cache 2s in our sideboard for our upgrades. Okay, So if my math is correct, we have 6 more cards we need to put into this deck. All right, let's look at some upgrades. And I'm going to show you guys the upgrade that I usually take in my level 0 Joe Diamond deck with this. And that is an asset that is called... I thought it was... Oh, I have this by experience now. I thought I had it by alphabetical. That is called Scientific Theory. This is a very nice Joe Diamond card. You're going to eventually want to get 2 of these in your deck. It's a stat boost for your stats that are relevant. It's fast to play, and it gives you a bit more of some help in regards to the Mythos phase, which is really nice. So we're going to run a 1 of Scientific Theory. So then that's going to be our 3 experience. All right. So we have 5 cards left. Here's the question of the day. How worried are we about dying? How worried are we about dying? If you ask me, the answer is not that worried. Time Roller, 59 months of the Golden Table. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being awesome. Much appreciated. I play very fast and loose when it comes to Joe Diamond, and actually also just and just ARKHAM in general. I'm not actually scared of dying too much. If I had a catchphrase in this game, it's probably, what's it gonna do? Kill me? Right? Like, that's probably, if I had to have like my face on a t-shirt that says like Justin PBG Arkham Horror, with brackets, a quote, it would be that. However, I think there is a very easy card here in Joe Diamond that's just like super easy to bring in this. It's Take the Initiative. It loses 1 for each action that's completed by any investigator this phase. You can use it during your turn to, like, if you go first, but it's great Mythos protection. It just puts you to 5 in your relevant stats. It also is practiced, so in a panic, you can dig it out. Mr. Tom, 2 months of the Golden Table. Thank you for using your Twitch Prime on us and giving us some Bezos bucks. Much appreciated. So I think we just run with a Take the Initiative. So our curve is actually pretty low. So how many of these? The Thorough Inquiry, let's assume these are going to be in our deck and the shortcuts are going to be in here. So we have what? 2 of these. So we have 4 2-cost cards. 4 3-cost cards, which is going to eventually turn into 2 and then 4. I mean, I think the Emergency Cache is probably still the way. It's always better. Here's the secret about economy, right? It's always better to have a little bit more than you need. It doesn't hurt to have a little bit more than you need, especially if it's like active economy, burning the Midnight Oil. Sorry, like burning the Midnight Oil, or if it's economy that helps everybody at the table. So if you don't need it, someone else does. But we have 3 more cards. And you might be thinking, hey, Justin, when does the fun get in here? And I got bad news for you, kids. I just like winning, so that is fun for me. My fun is winning the game. My fun is just killing it. I was going to say this before you even got there. Toe-to-Toe is going to be a card we're going to be putting in here. It has a lot of synergy with our guard dog. It's also just like an insanely strong card. It's very good with Vicious Blow. It's just a free draw off Overpower if you're really desperate. This is exactly kind of what we want here. This is something that you can eventually downgrade into something else, but I think Toe-to-Toe is really good for this. And I think for my last inclusion here, this is going to be our last flexible one. There's going to be a logical reasoning. So what logical reasoning does is you can play it in your hunch deck, but it is nice in your deck as well. It's only a 1-of, so it'll be harder to find. But we are going to be running a logical reasoning here because just some more horror healing that can come with it. Once we're all kitted out, we can kind of get rid of it. But we actually, if we're only staying as a 1-of, we probably are going to upgrade into the other version of the deck, other version of the card, because we'll generally have the 3 clues to make this one pop off. All right, that was the longest it's ever taken me to build a deck in a video, so I think we covered a lot of ground. Let's talk about some upgrades too. What about Safeguard? I don't think so. That's a great question. So Safeguard is a very strong card, but I don't think as the flex, you want to have other players do the moving, right? As a flex, your job is to be the one who is moving for like either versions of Safeguard, and you would rather them be the one who are playing Safeguard. So like if you were like the main Clover, like if you're Carolyn Fern, or if you are the main Goon and you want to save on actions, I think go for it. But I think as the flex, again, your actions are the least valuable. So you are the one who wants to be spending the move actions to move. You don't want to be the one saving on move actions. It's less efficient in your deck as a flex to be running Safeguard than it is for someone who is like, their actions are more crucial. So for me, Safeguard doesn't really move the needle for a flex deck. That is a great question though, because Safeguard is generally really good, but I think it goes down in value for flex investigators. Michael Lee is going to be in our sideboard. You can probably get away with just a 1-of for a while, but I think we're going to be wanting to pick him up. If we look at some upgraded insights, stuff that is like that I would look at grabbing. I'd be looking at grabbing a second scientific theory, so then if one dies, you can just play the other one. Upgrading your vicious blows and your deductions is also fine. But like really, this deck, like a flex, is all very low to the ground. I think a logical reasoning 4 is also just a fine upgrade to go with as well. Like I think this is also just kind of fine. You can also look at changing your card draw. Is that one card? Glimpse the Unthinkable. This is a nice replacement that you could do for like a Thorough Inquiry, for example. I'm not going to put it in the sideboard, but don't sleep on Glimpse the Unthinkable. Card is actually kind of pretty good at giving yourself card draw. You could go with like an upgraded No Stone Unturned, I think as well, but it's like a little bit hungry on the experience. Yeah, and I think none of these really move the needle too much. I think what you just want to do is you just want to like make your game plan more. I mean, I don't know if you actually need the. I think you kind of maybe. I actually don't even know if you need the other ones. You could get there eventually, but I think this is the priority for upgrades. And then honestly, I would just grab 2 Studiouses. The card is just like insanely good. And I think that's it for this Joe Diamond Flex deck. This is what I would do. I would start with the Survival Knives. I would get these in your kit. And then I would look at grabbing like Michael Lee's and Scientific Theories. You could also like grab one Michael Lee first to just like, if you get like 6 experience in the opening scenario, the perfect amount of experience you can get in the opening scenario is 7, because then you can grab one Michael Lee and a Survival Knife, and you can probably survive with one Michael Lee for a while. Playing that other guard dog ain't too bad. Don't be afraid to bank experience in this deck. The thing about like flex decks is that they are just like generally scrappy. So you are going to kind of just have to like make do with what you have. But luckily, what you have here is actually pretty nice. Before I close out this video, did anyone have any thoughts or comments, or like not comments, have any questions about anything on this deck in Twitch chat? If not, I'm just going to close this MFR out and be pretty happy with this deck. This is, I mean, it's a very basic one. Do you play the 1911? Yeah, I think if you have the 1911 in your opening hand, you would play it. However, if you have like the 1911 and like either of these other 2 weapons, I would play that first. Missed beginning of the video. What's the idea behind Survival Knife here? It's as a flex investigator, you need to be able to solve any problem that shows up. And that means that guns are generally less efficient to deal things. Because if you as a flex, if you run out of ammo, it's like, why are you even here? So I went with just 2 strong melee weapons. We went with Guard Dog because of that, because it works with the Survival Knife. But Upgraded Survival Knife is legitimately one of the strongest weapons in the game in terms of how it changes your ability to maneuver your turns. So that's why this one, it is a priority upgrade, as I said, but it is going to do great, great things. You didn't consider any for any Seeker allies. That's a great question, actually. All right, Seeker allies at level 0. So the ones that jump out, like, again, we want to be looking at something that costs 3 or 4 resources. You could run a Dr. Milan, but I think what Dr. Milan does is it's probably 1 on your Seeker if you're playing with a Seeker, and 2, I think it's going to give your deck the wrong idea of what your economy is, and I wouldn't run it. You could run Jeremiah Kirby. I mean, like, just burst card draw ain't a bad option. On the downside, he doesn't have any damage that goes with it. And the last one you could choose is Dr. Charles West III. This guy ain't good, but he's actually kind of good if you build entirely around him. He's like a budget, he's like a budget Alice Luxley. So if you could run Alice Luxley, it's better. But he gives you the additional tool. So if you're doing that, it is okay. But actually, like, if you just have one of the steady-handed assets, it's crazy how easy this MFer is to trigger. You'll trigger him every turn if you try for it. With that said, I do think the allies in the Seeker class are generally weaker for this deck in terms of flexing. So that's why I think, like, Alice Luxley, Beat Cop, and Guard Dog are the choices. If I wasn't running Survival Knife, like if we just took this out, the Survival Knife out, and changed into a 45 automatic, it would increase our curve, but luckily our curve is a little bit high anyway because our economy is a little bit higher. You could run Alice Luxley or Beat Cop instead. Guard Dog is only in this deck because specifically of the Survival Knife. Okay, let's save it. We did it, baby. We did it. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, let me know in the comments if you like this and you want to see more of this. If you want to see me do it with with Travis and Bryn and also other content creators, definitely let me know. If you have any decks that you want to see on this series in the future, let me know because I'll look at doing that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Huge thank you to all of our patrons for giving me these deck ideas to go with, and also for supporting the channel. And thank you to everyone who subbed on Twitch today. You guys all freaking rock. Have a good one. Thanks for watching. And as always, GG's.